They always say trust your instincts. But what do you do when your instincts are the first thing to betray you? When I moved into 32 Belmont Street, I thought I was getting a deal. The listing had been up for over 2 years. Cheap, clean, quiet neighborhood. It seemed too good to be true, and maybe deep down I knew it was, but I didn't care. I was tired of roommates, tired of cramped apartments. I wanted my own space. I just didn't expect that space to already belong to something else. The house was older than it looked in the pictures. The exterior had that faded, water-damaged look, like it had been sitting through storms long before I showed up. The lock on the front door turned too easily, and when I stepped inside, it felt like stepping into a paused life. Not abandoned, paused, like whoever lived there just stopped. There were dishes in the cabinets, shoes by the front door. A framed photo still sat on the fireplace mantel, face down. I told myself it was just the realtor's staging, but it didn't feel like that. The furniture wasn't polished. The fridge was unplugged, but a faint, sour smell clung to the inside like something had rotted and never quite left. That first night, I barely slept, not because I was scared, but because the house was too quiet. I'd gotten used to city sounds, sirens, traffic, muffled voices from next door. Here, there was nothing. Just an unnatural stillness that made every creak and groan sound like footsteps. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard something from the kitchen, a slow dragging sound. Not loud, almost like fabric brushing against the floor. I got up, turned on the hallway light, and walked toward it. But there was nothing, just a slight shift in the air, like someone had just left the room before I entered. The next morning, I laughed it off, told myself it was nerves. Maybe the wind, maybe an animal. The foundation was old. Houses make sounds. That's what I kept telling myself. But by the third night, it wasn't just sounds. It was breathing. I was lying in bed, lights off, scrolling through my phone. Everything was silent. Then, out of nowhere, I heard this long, shaky exhale right by my ear, like someone had leaned down, inches away, and breathed out slowly. I froze. The air around me felt cold, not chilly, but dead cold. I didn't move for almost 10 minutes. Eventually, I convinced myself it was my imagination, sleep paralysis, audio hallucination. I forced myself to get up, turn on every light in the house, and sat on the couch until sunrise. That's when I started noticing the room. Not a visible room, a space, a feeling. When I walked past the pantry door, there was always this pressure, like the air got thicker. I didn't want to go near it, and I couldn't explain why. One day, I finally opened the pantry. Just shelves, cans, nothing unusual, until I knocked on the back wall. It sounded hollow. That didn't make sense. The pantry was supposed to back up to the crawl space. I went outside to check. The layout didn't match. There was more space behind that wall than there should have been. I started tapping every inch of that pantry wall, until I found it. One panel that felt loose. I pulled at it, and behind it was a door. It wasn't like the other doors in the house. This one was narrow, almost hidden. No knob, just a small metal latch at the top. I stared at it for a long time. I can't explain the fear I felt. Not anxiety, not nervousness. Actual physical fear. My body didn't want to touch it, but I did. I pulled the latch, and the door creaked open. A rush of cold, earthy air hit me. Stairs led downward into complete darkness. The smell was thick, wet with old soil, something sweet and rotting. I stood there, holding the door open, staring into black for what felt like forever. And then I heard it, from deep below. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks, spaced out perfectly, like they were timed. I didn't imagine it. I know I didn't. I slammed the door shut and backed away. I didn't sleep that night. I left every light on. I kept checking the pantry, making sure that door was still shut. The next day, I called a realtor and asked about the previous owner. She hesitated, then said the house had been empty for 12 years. The last resident, a man named Edward Rowan, had disappeared. No signs of forced entry. No suspects. The case went cold, and eventually the bank repossessed the home. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror, and it blinked. I didn't. It blinked. I jumped back so fast I knocked over the lamp. The reflection stayed perfectly still, just staring. Then, slowly it smiled. But I didn't. I couldn't. The light flickered, and the reflection returned to normal. I grabbed the mirror, yanked it off the wall, and shoved it face down into the closet. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it had something to do with that room. The next morning, the mirror was back on the wall, hung perfectly, clean, as if nothing had happened. I didn't put it there, and I live alone. I stopped sleeping. I kept hearing voices. Sometimes it was whispering. Sometimes it was laughter, low and broken, like someone who'd forgotten how to be human. I stopped eating. I barely left the house. I just sat in the living room, lights on, TV playing static, waiting for something to change. But it didn't. One night, I finally snapped. I went to the pantry, opened that hidden door, and stepped inside. Each stair I descended, the colder it got. My phone flashlight barely lit a few feet ahead, but I kept going. The air felt heavy, thick, like it didn't want me there. At the bottom was a narrow corridor, made of stone. The walls were damp, and the ground felt uneven under my feet. I turned a corner, and there it was, a room, stone walls, no furniture, just one thing, a tall mirror standing against the far wall, the same mirror from my bedroom, but it wasn't reflecting me. It showed a version of the room, same shape, same walls, but different. In the reflection, someone was standing behind me. I turned around. No one. I looked back at the mirror. The figure was closer. I turned again. Nothing. Then I noticed something. My reflection was smiling again, and I wasn't. My reflection was smiling again, and I wasn't. I froze in place, staring at the mirror, feeling the cold sweat run down my neck. I wanted to move, wanted to look away, but my body refused to respond. I had to be imagining it. It couldn't be real, but it was. I was sure of it now. There was no denying it. The reflection of myself in the mirror was grinning, its face twisted in an expression of pure, unnerving delight. My eyes, were wide open, but they weren't mine. There was something else in them, something darker. It wasn't just a smile. It was a mockery, a trap. The more I stared, the more the reflection moved. It tilted its head slightly, as if it was considering something I couldn't comprehend. I blinked, and for that brief moment, the reflection blinked too. But then, as soon as my eyes opened again, the smile grew wider, more sinister. It wasn't me anymore. I turned around quickly, hoping to snap myself out of this bizarre trance. But when I looked back, everything was the same. The room, the mirror, no one behind me. But my reflection, it hadn't moved. I reached out, slowly, feeling the cold stone beneath my feet. Every step felt heavy, as if the air around me had thickened. I couldn't stop my hands from trembling as I placed them on the mirror's surface, expecting something, anything to happen. Maybe it was all just a trick, a reflection. A part of me wanted it to be a trick. But then the room started to change. The walls around me seemed to shift. It was so subtle at first, like the space itself was warping, but I could see it. The floor beneath me wasn't as solid as it used to be. The stone was crumbling, cracks spreading out from the corners like veins of something unnatural. The dim light from my phone flickered, throwing long shadows across the mirror and distorting everything around me. I could still see myself in the glass, still smiling, that horrifying grin widening. The mirror? No, this place was alive. I yanked my hand away, stumbling backward, my mind racing. I turned to run, but the moment I took a step, the floor beneath me shifted, pulling me toward the reflection. It was like gravity was no longer on my side, like the mirror was pulling me in, drawing me closer with invisible force. "Stop," I whispered, but the words fell hollow in the thick, oppressive air. I shook my head, fighting against the pull, my legs trembling, but the closer I got, the stronger the force became. It was as if the mirror was reaching out for me, like it was alive. I couldn't stop myself. The next thing I knew, I was standing right in front of it, eyes locked on the reflection that wasn't my own. I tried to look away, but my body was frozen, trapped in this waking nightmare. Then the reflection did something else. It spoke. The words came slow, distorted, like they were coming from somewhere deep within the mirror, not from my own mouth. "Come closer," it said, voice barely a whisper. "Come closer and you'll see everything." I wanted to scream, to run, to break free of whatever this was. But I couldn't. I couldn't even move. "Look," it whispered again, and this time it wasn't my reflection anymore. The face in the glass wasn't mine. It was someone else's. Someone else's eyes stared back at me, cold and vacant, the same twisted smile stretching across its face. I turned away, stumbling backward, breath shallow, but the mirror held me in place. It felt like something was pressing against my chest, an invisible weight crushing me, keeping me from breathing. It was suffocating me, but I couldn't look away. My eyes were glued to the glass, and I could feel it. Something cold and ancient reaching out from beyond the surface. I needed to get out. I needed to escape. I forced my legs to move, turning away from the mirror and stumbling back toward the narrow stairwell leading out of the room. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing to understand what I had just witnessed, what was happening to me. But as I reached the stairs, something else stopped me. A voice, low and trembling, echoed in my ears. "Stay." It wasn't from the mirror. It was from behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. No one. Just the darkness of the room and the heavy silence that pressed in on me. The door to the pantry was still wide open, and the stairs, those damn stairs leading down to that godforsaken basement, looked even more inviting now than before. The chill in the air was suffocating. I didn't know what I expected to find, but I knew I had to go back. Slowly, I made my way back toward the pantry, where that hidden door waited. Every step felt like it took more effort than the last, the weight of fear pressing down on me. I reached for the door frame, my hand shaking as I grasped the cold metal latch, and pulled it open. The air in the basement was thick with sickening smell, a mixture of damp earth, decayed wood, and something else I couldn't quite place. I descended slowly, my flashlight flickering, casting long shadows on the walls that seemed to move as I passed. The basement was different this time. I could feel it in the air. Something had changed. The walls felt closer. The ground beneath my feet seemed to pulse with every step, and at the far end where the mirror once stood, there was now only a blank wall. I stopped. Something wasn't right. I turned around, expecting to find the entrance, but there was only darkness behind me now. The stairs had disappeared. I was trapped. Then I heard it. That knock again. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from the wall. Not just any wall. The one in front of me. The one where the mirror should have been. Without thinking, I reached out and touched the cold surface. And that's when I felt it. The shape. The outline of something moving underneath the wall. I backed away, heart racing, but it was too late. The wall shifted. The surface cracked, and then with a sickening sound, it split open. I couldn't breathe. My eyes were wide with terror as a figure emerged from the darkness, its form barely visible but unmistakable. It was my reflection, but it wasn't me. The figure stepped forward, its eyes locked on mine, and as it did, I could hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching from behind me. I turned. There, standing at the foot of the stairs, was my reflection, the one I had left behind in the mirror. My heart skipped a beat, the air around me growing colder by the second. The figure at the top of the stairs, the reflection, wasn't just staring at me. It was watching me, hunting me. I stood frozen in place. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but the legs beneath me refused to cooperate. It was like they were made of stone, like I couldn't escape, couldn't move, couldn't even think. I could hear my breath, shallow and quick, louder than ever in the oppressive silence. The reflection at the top of the stairs didn't move, but I could feel its presence closing in on me, inch by agonizing inch. Something about its stillness made my skin crawl, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There was a sense of awareness in the way it looked at me, like it knew exactly what I was thinking, like it was reading my mind. And then, just like that, It moved, a slight tilt of its head, almost like it was studying me, and then a slow, deliberate step forward. It wasn't me. Not anymore. A cold chill ran through me as I realized something terrible. It was never me. I turned to the wall, frantic now. The figure at the top of the stairs wasn't just a reflection. It had been there for much longer than I had realized. It wasn't something created by the mirror. It was the mirror. It was the house. The knocking, the shifting walls, the unnatural weight in the air. It had all been leading to this. I stumbled backward, bumping into the dark, damp walls of the basement, my eyes wild as I tried to make sense of what was happening. My head felt heavy, a ringing in my ears that grew louder by the second, as though the house itself was closing in on me. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted the salty tears on my lips. I wiped my face hastily, but the reflection at the top of the stairs never moved. It just stared. There was only one option now. I had to leave. I darted back toward the entrance, but my feet were dragging as if the floor itself were trying to keep me there. It was like quicksand, pulling me deeper into the darkness. I reached the stairs and turned, but I couldn't make out the exit. Everything was different now. The house was breathing, shifting, alive. I could feel the reflection closing in behind me, moving faster than I could. It was coming. My hands trembled violently as I reached out toward the stairs. I had to get out. But before I could take another step, I heard the voice, the one from the mirror, the whisper, "Stay with us." The words were thick, almost like they had a presence of their own, like they were wrapping around me, pulling me back into the depth of the house. My stomach churned. I tried to scream, but my voice felt trapped inside my throat, barely escaping in hoarse gasps. The reflection behind me was almost at the foot of the stairs now. The figure's face, my face, was contorted into a grotesque grin, its eyes wide and hollow, the smile stretching impossibly far. It was getting closer. The air around me was thick with the scent of decay, like old wood and rot. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't escape. Suddenly, the door slammed shut with an ear-piercing bang, trapping me in the basement. I whirled around, heart pounding. The reflection wasn't just standing still anymore. It was moving toward me, slowly at first, but with each step, the distance between us vanished. The light flickered, casting long, twisting shadows across the walls, making the reflection appear even more monstrous, more wrong. I backed away into the darkness of the basement, the stone walls closing in around me. I could feel the pressure in the air growing heavier, my breath coming in short gasps as I clutched the wall for support. There had to be a way out. There had to be. I turned toward the far corner, where I remembered seeing an old chest. It was my only option. If I could get to it, maybe I could find something to use, anything to break this curse cycle. But as I made my way toward the chest, I noticed something new. A figure, a shadow standing at the far end of the room. No, not just a shadow, another reflection. It was staring at me from the farthest corner, its face barely visible. It wasn't like the one at the top of the stairs. No, this one looked older, much older. Its features were twisted, the face blurred, like something that had been trapped inside the wall for decades. But its eyes were alive, burning with malevolent energy. I couldn't breathe. My legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor. My fingers scraped across the ground as I tried to crawl away. But every time I moved, the shadows seemed to stretch, pulling me toward the corner where that figure stood. I had to escape. I had to get out of the house. But as I tried to push myself up, I felt something cold and sharp grip my ankle, pulling me backward. I twisted and kicked. But whatever was had a hold on me, dragging me across the cold stone floor, the dark corners of the basement closing in like jaws ready to swallow me whole. And then, in that final, desperate moment, I heard it. That voice again. The voice from the mirror. Join us. The cold fingers of the house were wrapping around me now, pulling me closer to the wall, closer to the place where the reflections danced. My vision blurred as I was dragged into the darkness, my body aching, the reflection moving faster, its grin widening. I couldn't breathe. Then, I wasn't alone anymore. I was falling. No, being dragged through the cold, damp darkness. My body felt like it was sinking into the very foundation of the house, a heavy, suffocating pressure that crushed the air from my lungs. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Every breath I took was thick with dust and decay. I couldn't tell where the floor was anymore. My vision swam in and out, the shadows warping around me like dark tendrils, pulling me deeper into the house. The walls, if they were even walls, seemed to stretch and twist as though the house itself was alive in a way I couldn't begin to understand. And then I heard it, the whispers. They were soft at first, barely audible like a distant hum, but they grew louder. The walls trembled, vibrating with a dark energy that seemed to come from the very core of the earth. I could hear voices, so many voices, speaking all at once, overlapping, coming from every direction. "Join us," they whispered, over and over again, each voice carrying a different tone. Some calm, others desperate, some pleading, some angry. "Join us." I felt something cold press against my back, a sharp chill that cut through me like ice. I turned my head, barely able to see anything in the oppressive darkness. But there, in the corner of my eye, I saw it. A reflection. Not one of me. Not a reflection of anything I recognized. This reflection was something ancient, something twisted. Its eyes were dark pits, hollow and void of any emotion, in its face, a grotesque mass of decay and sorrow, seemed to stretch unnaturally, as though it was trying to break free of its own confines. I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop myself from being drawn to it. It was pulling me, like gravity, like it was a part of me, like it had always been a part of me. Suddenly, the floor beneath me gave way. I was falling, no longer in control of my own body, my hands reaching out in desperation, but nothing was there to grab onto. The voices grew louder, the whispers turning into shrill, shrieking cries that echoed to the very bones of the house. And then, silence. I hit the ground with a sickening thud, my body aching as I tried to catch my breath. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely even open my eyes. Everything was a blur, everything except the reflection. It was there again, the figure. But this time, it wasn't just watching me. It was inside me. I could feel it, like a part of me that had been buried, forgotten, and now it was coming back. The reflection shifted, its face distorting, its grin spreading wider and wider until it was almost grotesque, something monstrous, something wrong. And then I understood. The house wasn't haunted by spirits. It wasn't cursed by some malevolent force. The house was the curse. The mirror, the reflections, the whispers, they were all parts of something older, something darker than anything I had imagined. The house had trapped me, yes, but it wasn't the house that needed me. It was the reflection. The house was a prison, and the reflection was its keeper. And I had become the new prisoner. The walls around me began to tremble again, vibrating with energy, and I realized with a sickening jolt that I wasn't alone. The other figures, the other reflections, were there too, surrounding me, watching me. They were the others who had come before me, those who had been swallowed by the house. They were just like me, trapped, waiting for someone else to take their place, to join them in the never-ending cycle. "Join us," the voices whispered again, but this time it wasn't just from the walls. It was from inside my own mind, from inside me. "Join us." I could feel the reflection pulling me closer, its face pressing against my own, its eyes wide and hollow. Empty. I fought it. I fought the voice, fought the reflection, fought the house. But it was no use. My hands shook as I reached out to stop it, but I couldn't. The reflection was pulling me in, and I was powerless to resist. And then the world went dark.